Also tonight, we're live at the Ford plant in Oakville, where workers are awaiting the result tonight of talks between its union and the company. A strike deadline is now less than a half an hour away. At stake, a new agreement for 6,700 Ford workers. Well, we could learn at any moment whether a deal has been struck or whether Ford workers in Oakville, Bramalea, and Windsor will hit the picket lines. The deadline for an agreement is 11:59 tonight in what could be the first strike by Canadian workers at one of the big three automakers since 1996. Well, CTV's Tracy Tong is at the Sheridan Centre, where the talks are still ongoing. And Tracy, the union says these negotiations have been more challenging than what we saw recently with GM and Fiat Chrysler.
That's right, Andrea. The most challenging of the three is how a Unifor spokesperson put it. She also called these negotiations painfully slow. They started talking months ago, back in August, but it wasn't until a couple of hours ago that she says they're getting closer to reaching a deal with Ford. The first real sign of progress came just hours before the strike deadline, when Ford gave Unifor a new proposal this evening.
Movement by the employer is now evident, but there is a lot of work to do and a lot to do ahead of us.
Unifor says talks with Ford have been the most challenging of the Detroit 3 automakers. GM reached a deal in September. Fiat Chrysler followed suit weeks later, but Ford was not willing to follow the pattern framework without a few concessions in long-term health plans and wages for new hires.
Ford is demanding an offset to the cost of the enhanced in-progression wage grid. The enhanced grid is part of the pattern agreement, and Ford wants to immediately introduce temporary full-time employees to offset this grid.
Unifor also says they need more promise of investment for Ford's Canadian operations.
The fate is in the employer's hands. We will either reach a tentative agreement or we will be on strike.
Close to 7,000 workers in Oakville, Windsor, and Bramalea await instructions from their strike coordinators. And workers have been asked to continue working until that 11:59 strike deadline, until they hear other instructions from their picket captains. Now, as for this podium behind me, this is where we're expecting that update of whatever outcome there may be at midnight. That will be delivered by Jerry Dias, who is the national president of Unifor. And of course, we'll keep you updated here on CTV News. Reporting live, I'm Tracy Tong. Andrea, back to you.
Thank you, Tracy. Meanwhile, Ford Canada's October sales will not be released tomorrow as planned. That's due to a fire today at the company's headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. A lack of power shut down the data center, and dealers were not able to report final day sales. Ford of Canada now expects to announce October sales later this week.